So, hey Shane, thank you for joining us today. For those who don't know, you're my cousin, but you're also an amazing life coach. I've been observing your journey and seeing where that's taken you and on your own process. And I got the call to have you on largely to understand how you see coaching and the work that you do with people, but also to chat a bit more about the work with men, because a lot of the people that I've had on so far predominantly work with women, and I work with both men and women. So it's cool to sort of have some of those distinctions, hear your journey, and also for some of my audience to meet my other side of the family. I often talk about dad's side of the family, but not so much about mum's, even though mum is like such a huge supporter of my work. It wouldn't exist without her. So thank you for being here today.
So I was born and raised on the farm, so have a strong farming background. I did spend the 6.5 years in the New Zealand Army straight out of school. Went back to the farm, mum and dad's farm, in 2003 when I left. But I didn't feel I was really living up to my full potential. Like, I was always holding back, not really following through with anything. And I kind of just started looking into different things and came across these CDs of a guy called Tony Robbins, who's big in America, or big around the world, but he's an American guy, and he runs personal development seminars amongst many other things. So I attended one of his in 2015. At the time, I was just going through life, going, well, this is just life, just going through the motions. And it wasn't until I really went, well, actually, I want more. And then I by chance attended that seminar, or brought those CDs and then attended the seminar. After I'd done that, then I went, wow, there's actually so much more potential. And I started to identify things that were holding me back. Because up until then, I just was oblivious. I wasn't looking into it or anything. Just massive value out of it. It was 4 days, real intense, like 40 hours. Wow, I just want to do the next one of his. So I did a few of his over the, 3 or 4 years, and just keep getting more value every time. It did start out mostly with men. Most of them, and I'd say 90% of them have all been farmers. And just more recently, I've worked with a lot more women. It's more probably balanced, 50-50 at the moment, just the way it's turned out, really. My real focus now is to help people really reach their potential by removing the inner blocks that are holding their mind back from achieving it. Not a physical disability or not a physical attribute that's holding them back, or it's their own mindset and their thinking that's stopping them from achieving what it is they want. What I like to do is I really like to focus on selling 1 or 3 programs. So the first one I call is just an emotional clear out, where we identify a couple of events that have happened in your past that you keep referencing now and they're actually holding you back from doing something. So we just go back and clear out those events. So the first program, the shorter program, which normally takes 4 hours, is around just a couple of events, identify a couple of events and then remove those emotions and limiting beliefs. Then the second program, which most people sort of go into, is a 6-month unlimited coaching program where, I do the full personal history, elicit a set of values, remove the limiting beliefs and the negative emotions, and then re-elicit the values, and they find they're just about always towards. I spend a whole day with them, and it can be anything from, I think the shortest one I did was 5 hours and the longest one I did was 13 hours, where we do a whole complete personal life history. And I find all the events, all the people, all the situations that have happened in your life that you've got a negative association to and are holding you back. A set of values in your life in a certain area of your life. So the example I give is people value money. Everyone's got a value of money, right? Some people will value money. So for me, I value money because the more money I have, the more I can achieve, right? The more I can do, the more I can give, the more I can give back, all that kind of stuff, or the more we can do as a family. Other people will value money because they don't want to live on the street. So they're pushed away from living on the street, whereas I'm drawn towards more options. Now, if you have an away value, if you're pushed away from something, you only push yourself away. What you do is you're always looking at what you want to get away from, and you only get yourself so far away that you're comfortable, right? To a point where you're comfortable. So you've got yourself in a financial situation where you're comfortable, you're living in an all right house, blah, blah, blah. But then what happens is when you get struck with a time like this, and there's a massive financial downturn, is you get sucked straight back into the danger zone. Now, if you're in the mindset of you want more just to be able to create more, give more, you're going to get further and further away from the unwanted. So when you get to the financial downturn, you get sucked back to a place that's still comfortable, but you're still looking and striving for more. Now, people do that with all of their values, whether it's love, connection, integrity. By removing the negative emotions and limiting beliefs, I can then flip that completely so they're all completely drawn towards it. So then your life will grow instead of just being stagnant. And then just, create an empowering future, which is goal setting and incantations, morning routine and stuff like that. And then my third program is a 15-month program where we start with the full day intervention again, same thing I just described, but it's more focused around getting maximum growth to really push yourself. So it's a lot of accountability. And then what happens is as you're growing, you find you start coming across more limiting beliefs you have about yourself, or there may be other events come up that have got those negative emotions attached to it. So I'll just do another intervention later on. But it's all about maximum growth. It's extreme growth, that 15-month program.
You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah. So Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which is exactly what it says. Neuro for the brain, linguistic, the language, and the programming. So the language we use inside our mind, inside our brain, and the programming that is created from it and it produces. So, well, the reason you got to that situation was the belief patterns you downloaded before you were 7, because that's what builds our belief patterns, is what happens before we're 7. So I always go back and find out what the root cause is and then work with that. So it's the difference between treating the cause and treating the symptom to rewire the nervous system. It removes all the negative association, negative attachment you have to any event, person, or situation from your past, and rewires it to only see it in a positive light. It goes straight. I really specialise in using timeline therapy. With timeline therapy, it's all about removing the negative emotions of anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt, because they're the 5 major negative emotions. And then there's other little emotions that might come up that need clearing. And also, the other big thing about it is clearing limiting beliefs we have about ourselves. And 90% of the population have a limiting belief that I'm not good enough, which has come from, again, when you were so young, just all the being told you can't do something. Just being told you can't do something makes you feel like you're not good enough to do something. And even if it's to protect you, you travel back in time, like in short term, you travel back in time and float above the event that you've got trouble with. And you look down on it, and then you preserve the positive learnings from that event. Because if it's an event that's affecting you in a negative way, you're only going, oh, that's where I was hurt, that's where I was angry, that's where I was sad. And now you've only taken on the negative association from that event, and you use that as a reference to future, live your life in the future. Now, if you go back and take the positive learnings, you can use the positive empowering learnings from it to let you move forward in the future. You actually allow yourself to take the learning from when you were 5, 3, 15, whatever age, and use it to grow yourself and push yourself forward.
That process.
Well, the first thing is identifying there's a problem there, right? Instead of just going like I did. I used to go, oh, this is just life, just cruise along. And then look at other people that are real successful and go, oh, well, that's just them, that's not me. Well, the reason you got to that situation was the belief patterns you downloaded before you were 7. Because that's what builds our belief patterns, is what happens before we're 7. So I always go back and find out what the root cause is and then work with that. So it's the difference between treating the cause and treating the symptom. So the first thing is really identifying that you're not happy or that you're dissatisfied. Just asking yourself, what do you want? And then go, why? What's stopping me? And if you can't answer what's stopping me, then you have to ask someone else. You have to find someone who's already got the solutions, and then ask them, what do they do? What do they recommend? Where do they get their help? And then just, start following the trail from there. And it all comes down to opening up and asking a question to start with.
Yeah, it is a bit of a trail, this personal development journey. It's like that you can't find the next person without doing the preliminary work, I find anyway.
And it's a trail that's in a jungle, and you can't see the paths. And there'll be a path come up, and you've got to decide, which way do I go? It's like those old books that they used to have where you could choose to go to take the path, or go to chapter 5, or go to page 5 or page 15 or whatever. You have to make that decision, and you don't know where you're going to end up until you actually start heading down there, because you can't actually see around the next bend. So
you've described all these things and these tools and these techniques that you use for coaching, but how does someone choose who's the right coach for them?
That's a good question. The first thing I recommend is doing the research and look into different sub-modalities or modalities or whatever to find out what's the right path. I mean, meditation just might be the right path for someone, or Reiki, or it might be a full NLP timeline therapy session. There's so many different things out there. It's really understand what are the benefits, or what are the desired outcomes for each thing you choose. Really, it just comes down to finding a person you can trust. You've got to know, like, and trust the person. So find that person, and then it's up to, it's time to make that investment. So you just got to make that decision.
Great. And then how would you describe the difference between, say, coaching and psychology, or coaching and mentoring? to someone, because I feel like in Australia at least, or probably New Zealand as well, like coaching is a newer modality than it is in the States.
Yeah, and it's each person's interpretation of it's completely different, right? The way I look at it is what I do is probably a middle between accountability and giving people direction and the whole psychology side of it, or only psychology or anything like that. So I sort of work with the mind to change the psychology and then teach them how to use that to move forward. Mm-hmm. Like if it's like you can go to a doctor and he just gives you something to treat a symptom you've got. But if it doesn't fix the cause of it, you're going to be back next week looking for more tablets or Band-Aids or whatever they gave you the first time, right?
Are you comfortable sharing in your own process and your own journey some of the things that you had to work through, that you found root causes and pulled them out and shifted your behaviour?
First thing is I got 3 brothers, right? So the first thing that really happened there was on the second. So the oldest brother, I felt Pete was always off doing his own thing. And then I felt like my 2 younger brothers, Brian and Nigel, I felt like they were best buddies. So then I felt like I was alone. And then I went to primary school, and like I said, it was only a little school. There was 2 other boys my age, and they were both Māori boys, and they lived one lived at the marae, and the other one lived at the local sawmill. But they had their own little culture and stuff like that I felt like I was omitted from. So next thing, I'm alone again at school. So then I go to high school, and then same thing. So then again, felt completely alone. So what happened was I created a fear of rejection because I actually craved wanting to be part of a group, but I didn't know how to be. So then I wouldn't go out and put myself in a situation where I'd have to really interact with people through the fear of rejection. What it actually did was it taught me to fear failing, because I found out that if I went into a group and did something and did it wrong, I got laughed at. So then I felt like I failed, right? So then I felt, well, okay, I fear failure now. And then it turned into a fear of success, because for me to be able to succeed, I had to risk failure. So that was just not going to happen. Then I got to the point where I was like, well, if I'm not succeeding, who's going to like me? Why would someone like me if I'm not a success in any way? So then I got to then I'm going, well, if nobody likes me, then how could I like myself? And then you go, well, if I can't like myself, what's the point? So then you start really feeling down on yourself. Now, I didn't go to depression or anything like that, but I just didn't feel comfortable with myself. It was probably a really good point for me to intercept that, because it could have gone the other way and was just self-sabotage. I was a master of self-sabotage and just self-sabotage everything else, and just probably use more alcohol to suppress it and just turn my life into a real masterpiece of rubbish. So, interesting, the bullfighting thing came about because I just went to a rodeo once and saw the bullfighting and thought, that looks cool. And then Peter was riding bulls. The next year I started riding bulls. So the first thing that happens there is the rodeo community is a real community, and it's real family sort of oriented, because there's lots of families and you feel like you're part of a family. So you can see why I got addicted to it, right? Because I actually felt like I was part of a family. And then because the bullfighting thing appealed to me, I started fighting bulls. And what was happening then is you get a lot of recognition when you're a bullfighter, because you're out there saving people, right? You're looking out for them. You get lots of pats on the back and people buying you a drink at the bar and stuff. So all of a sudden I felt really special. I'd never felt that before. So it became an addiction to me. Now, what it did over the whole amount of the whole time was it just gave me a lot of real certainty that I could actually be something. And then that just led to really building confidence and stuff like that. It did teach me how to face a challenge, really. In that situation, like a bull does what a bull wants to do. You can't just blow. It's not a rugby field where the ref can blow the whistle because you're lying on the ground and you're hurt. You've got to keep going, because he's just going to keep doing what he does. So it taught me to really push through and just really, really keep going until you get the result.
What you feel like Nana and Papa gave us, in a way, that fuels us now. Is there anything that comes to mind?
Nana and Papa, they really installed the hardworking farming community values, right? And all of our family. It's where it really that comes down to being. Farmers are known to be genuine, authentic, hardworking, and just get on and do it, right? On the flip side of that, if you go back to when Nana and Papa really probably started, seeing each other or first met each other at Motnau, very isolated, just went home, was on their own, only really socialised when they went to the ball and stuff. But if you think even further, the people that live further out in the country where they didn't have the people to talk to, so they just suppressed their emotions. They just shut it off and went, I'm feeling something, I don't know how to deal with it, I don't know who to talk to, I'll just shut it off. The problem is when you shut it off, you're just repressing it. an emotion repressed is an emotion aggressed, right? So the more you repress it, the more aggressive it gets. And to aggress just means to move forward towards conflict if you break it down into the battle sense.
Papa once said to me the happiest time that he ever had was when he was like before he met Nana, when he literally didn't even know what he ate and he just lived on his own in that little shack, you know.
Yeah.
And I often, even though like there's both of those aspects that you spoke of are in that story, right? For me anyway. But it also inspires me to remember, you know, to keep things simple, and that we don't need all this lavish stuff to have a certain life. But yeah, it's I often reflect on that story of his.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about that is when you are living just on your own, you're only living your values, and so there's no conflict because you've only got your values. You just look after yourself. You do what you want. When you then meet someone else, whether it's going into a flatting situation or you start living with someone and you marry them, there's two different values coming together. So then very rare do they all ultimately match completely, right? So there's always some that are offset. So then there's a conflict of values there. So then you've got to learn to communicate and how to live in that environment when you value and have different beliefs differently.
Yeah, so true, so true.
They're quite often a little bit harder to crack open because they're so good at suppressing the emotions. And that's a generational thing that's been passed down. So it does take a bit to crack them open. I have found that a lot of the men I've worked with, any women, some of the actually women as well, but mostly those men from the farming world have had or have got fractured relationships with their fathers. Because quite often they end up working side by side, right? You know, they go, oh, you're the next generation. And then, I mean, there's quite often one thing Dad and I never did was have an argument on the farm, which was really rare for our situation because a lot of father-son operations have a lot of disagreements. For one reason or another, quite often the son comes in with a new idea and the father's like, no, I've done it like this for 50 years. Why would I change? And the son gets frustrated because he can see something that's been eaten and he wants to try something. He's not even given the opportunity. So then there's resentment built, or then he goes and just does it. He changes the yard or fixes the laneway or tries to run the sheep a different way. And then he does it. And then the father doesn't like it. So he builds a resentment and then they're holding resentment onto each other and then they argue, you know, and it goes on and on and on. I had one guy, he was in his 50s and he hated his father, absolutely hated him. He died 12 years ago and still had an overwhelming amount of hate for him. For me to remove that hate from him is I had to get him to realize that he was the only one holding on to the hate. I mean, Dad was gone. It's because for him to hate him, it made him feel more powerful than what he was.
And so you said that the men are harder to crack open. How do you find the women approach it then?
Well, women, the feminine thing's more about opening up and expressing themselves. So they start to open up and express themselves. Whereas a masculine, so the difference between a masculine and feminine energy, a masculine, if you go, how was your day? They'll go, good. If you ask a woman or a feminine energy, how was your day? They'll tell you, you know, there's a good chance they're going to tell you over the next hour what happened in the last 8 hours, you know, right into detail. So they're already opening up and expressing themselves anyway. You're already getting the little, you know, the little clues and the little sub things that they say that might be a problem or might be off anyway. But if you just go to a guy and go, oh, why do you feel upset? They go, I don't know. Or it just frustrates me sometimes, you know.
Do you find, because I find with my work that men, they, like I wouldn't use that languaging, but that they do take longer to crack open, but once they get it, they really get it. Whereas sometimes women seem to get it because we're so used to pleasing, right? So we're like, yeah. But maybe we haven't actually got it. And so it can take us longer to actually make the significant changes.
Yeah, you see the men, they'll go, oh, you'll see their facial expressions a lot more. They'll go, like, you'll see the little lights come on and then they sort of get it straight away. And then I do find with a woman, actually, it's like a week later or 2 weeks later, they go, oh, and I've just realized this, and oh, this means that now, you know. So, and I mean, that's just a general statement. That's not, you know, actually correct all the time. But yeah, as a general overall thing, that's probably, and that actually, I never really thought about it until you'd asked me that actually. So growth mindset, for me, so my number one value in life is to broaden my awareness. And that's a growth mindset. Funnily enough, the more you know, the more you don't know. The more you know, the more you know you don't know. But for me, it's just like constant learning now, because the more I know, the more I can help someone else. So growth mindset is for me to have more knowledge to be able to help more people. And if I can give that knowledge to them, then they're going to have a growth mindset because they are growing and knowing more too. Yeah. So if you're doing it tough right now, there's a good chance it's because of all the uncertainty. And don't be scared to ask either. Like there's people going, oh, I don't want to go on Sentiment, or I don't want to go to WHIS. Why not? It's just a pride thing. And it's just, you're fearing the opinion of someone else. The only reason you wouldn't go and ask for help is because you don't want to appear to be weak. Well, everybody's in a vulnerable state right now and can be weak. But by asking for help, you don't know who's going to come up and say, oh, you should do this, and give you the solution, give you a suggestion that just solves your problems or makes your life so much easier. So go out and ask for help. Don't be scared of someone else's.
Diving into the pride thing, what do you think that's something that holds us back a lot as people?
100%. Yeah. If you're not proud of yourself, then you're suppressing a part of yourself, which means you're not going to be willing to activate the most successful part of yourself. That makes so much sense. Like if you're suppressing a part of yourself, you're not fully activating all your resourcefulness, which means you're not going to allow yourself to fully succeed. So why are you doing that? You're only suppressing yourself because you fear the opinion of someone else. And I had a good friend of mine tell me, the only reason you fear judgment is because you value the other person's opinion about yourself more than you value your own opinion of yourself. It shows what you can achieve. And right down to the little things, like you learned to tie your shoelace or you learned to ride a bike. Those were big things back then. But we just write it off as, so what? But,
or you were pushed down the hill by your father. By instance, just learn now.
Well, you do what I did when I was teaching Brian to ride his bike and break his arm.
Kiwi kids.
yeah, typical way. Yeah. Okay, so my website is just shanebird.com. Very straightforward. And then social media is just look up Shane Bird on Facebook, or Shane Bird Coaching is my business page there. And just, reach out, send me a message. Love to hear from anyone, just to say hi and, that you want to connect. And that's the best way to get hold of me. Yeah, based in Sydney. And obviously now everything's online. So I do a lot of work online. Yeah, so I've actually got two catchphrases that I always use. And one is you've got to change your mindset to change your life. And the only limits you have in your life are the limits you choose to hold on to yourself. And the key thing in there is the you choose, because where we are right now in our life has been every decision we've made in our life. And it's always been our decision. We've always had the option of going left or right. And we've always chosen. So if you're somewhere you don't want to be, you ask yourself, why am I here? So it's all about taking your power back.
Thank you. Appreciate you.